Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Pacific Angler Friday Fishing Report. We're filming for June 5th, and this week the government got something right. Then they proceeded to get 3 things wrong. We're going to look at what they did right, but we're also going to look at what they did wrong because we are concerned that they might be sweeping something under the rug and throwing us under the bus, and we want to make sure you guys are aware of it. I'm going to go over that right off the hop when we get into the fishing report, so if it's nowhere near June 5th, stay tuned for that. Then click up here. This is a link to all our Friday fishing reports. We do it every week, so I'm going to have some fishing knowledge stuff that's fresh for you guys. On that front, we're going to be looking at the weather. We're not going to see a beautiful weekend this week. We've had some intermittent / unsettled weather, and we're going to look at how that's going to affect the Vancouver weather, the Squamish weather, the interior weather for you lake fishermen, as well as the marine forecasts and the tides. We've heard some good reports this week when it comes to the interior lake fishing front. Zach and Jordan were out last week. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Brendan was out this week, actually yesterday, and had some trouble with the weather. We're going to talk about that as well. I've got a couple cool flies this week, one with that in mind. Zach's got a pattern that they used last week that they put some pretty good numbers on the board with, and it's always cool to copy a pattern, stick it in your box when you know some guys have had, a good double-digit solid day with decent sized fish. On the other fly front, Andre has started to load his beach box. If you guys don't know, the pink shirt, Andre will stand out at the local beaches around Vancouver on every single good tide for July and August, and he started to load his box for the flies that he's going to need on that front. We're going to go over that in the fly tying section at the back end of the report. So if you're considering putting some stuff in your lake box, or you're considering getting ready for the beach fishing, you'll want to check that out. We also are still running our giveaway for the free fly box that we did last week. We did an episode of What's in My Fly Box where we looked at our meat and potatoes lake fishing patterns as well as some go-to standard chronomid patterns. We're giving away this box, so I'm going to leave links up here to that video. You can still have time to enter, and next week we're going to be announcing the winner. Also, if you guys are killing some time this weekend, Jason's going to be on ESPN Outdoors. It's called Outdoor Line. It's a podcast that's been done. He's done it a few times. They're going to be talking about salmon fishing, some insider stuff. It's really fun, a really cool insight with some great fishing minds in the podcast. So you want to make sure you check that out. I'm going to leave links down in the description. Stick that one in your guys' calendars for Saturday, I think maybe Sunday, information down below. But you'll definitely want to check that out if you're a salmon fisherman. As always, guys, you want to see more reports like this, consider hitting that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let's get into her. All right, guys, thanks for joining me this week. Let's start off with the politics. So the first thing, the thing that they got right is they've changed something with freshwater licensing. It's something that's been sort of on and off. It's been published a few times that it was allowed and then a few times that it wasn't. But there's an official publication that states that you can now use digital copies of your freshwater license to be legally out fishing. Now, I'm going to take a look at it here for you guys because I want to make sure we get the verbiage correct. And here it is. So when fishing, you are legally required to produce your fishing license and government issue photo ID. We all know that. An unmodified paper copy printed in 8.5 by 11 paper. Sure. An unmodified electronic copy on your digital device, i.e. a phone or your tablet or computer. Now, the caveats are when you do need to record a conservation number or catch, when you're writing down how many steelhead you've caught or how many Chinook, you have to have a paper copy. You can't do that digitally. But at least for the average guy who's out, who may be catching and releasing or not keeping a species that needs to be recorded, you can now save that to your phone, and that's awesome. That's gonna make things so much easier for everybody. Have it really easily to reach. Don't have to go through 1,000 photos in your phone to get it for the conservation officer. Make his life easy. Have it saved somewhere easy to find on your phone, but that is going to make things much better, and we really appreciate everyone listening. Now, where did the government get it wrong? Well, on a couple fronts. The first one that got announced on Monday was that there's a number of parks that aren't going to be opened. And it was concerning when I looked at this list. I'm going to give you guys links to that down in the description, but there's a bunch of them that really make no sense. No sense when you look at parks very close to them to do similar services. And their reasoning behind it is that in these parks, it's unsafe because of COVID-19 to open them. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but my hackles rose on my neck when I saw the list. There's a number of parks that will affect first, your guys' chances to get out and enjoy the environment, enjoy some peace and quiet in the outdoors, but there's also a number of these parks that are going to affect people's livelihoods when it comes to guiding, when it comes to guided trips, when it comes to accessing cool areas. And it concerned me. It concerned me because it had no rhyme or reason of what was open and what wasn't. I'm gonna leave that up to the government, guys, but I want you guys to keep your eye on this because I'm scared that they might be slipping a few things under the rug when it comes to making it easy for them to open stuff and not have to argue with people that may have a point of view or a stake in said parks. Keep your eyes on it. Now, what else have they got wrong? Well, it falls back to something that we talked about almost a month and a half ago now, and that was when you guys saw your freshwater regulations for this season. Salmon fishing was pretty much closed right across the board. There were a few caveats there, but in all major salmon fisheries, it just said salmon fishing closed, whether it was the Capilano, the Vetter, the Squamish, they were all closed. Now, at the time, I took the high road and I said, you know what? I'm gonna trust the government. They're gonna open these on a case-by-case basis and work through it as the season comes. Because at the time, there were no salmon in those rivers. Now, we've had 2 chances to see rivers where salmon have arrived and the openings have not come, at least in a timely manner. The first was the Capilano. I would say they were at least 2 weeks behind on that front, and they could have easily opened it even a month earlier than that, just to give us the opportunity and go out and try to catch those first fish that were coming in. There's zero conservation reason to have kept that closed. There's zero health and safety reason to have kept that closed. We'll give that one a pass. The next one has been the Chehalis, and that is still closed as well, and we're scratching our heads. Again, these aren't major fisheries, but as we see this come down the pipe, I'm hoping that it is just government sloppiness. Government not willing to put in the extra hour and know that there are people out there that both rely on this for their income, their livelihood, as well as their R&R, which is just as important as all of the above. I want you guys to keep your eyes on this as the other fisheries open. Again, I'm concerned that they're going to sneak something past us where a fishery remains closed or is not opened, not because of conservation reasons, not because of fish numbers, but because of politics. Lastly, I really like them to open salmon fishing by now. I didn't expect it. We're hoping that we're going to see something at the middle of the month, but salmon fishing in the ocean for retention. There have been a number of closures when it comes to marine areas, but there is no opening when it comes to salmon retention, whether it's a hatchery retention, whether it's limited areas. If you guys are out there, you work for the government, you have any say in this at all, please consider putting in a few extra hours, but make this opening happen. There's no scientific reason to keep it closed. There's no conservation reason to make it closed. There could only be political reasons to be closed. And let us know if that's the case and say it's going to be closed and give us a date. That allows us to work within those guidelines. All right, you guys heard me rant. Let's get into the fishing knowledge. That's why you guys are here. So on the weather side of things, let's take a peek at that. We've got Vancouver weather, and yeah, unfortunately, at least as I'm filming this Wednesday night, doesn't look to be a beautiful weekend. Kind of like last weekend. We're gonna have cloud 18, 16, a little bit of rain mixed in there. Maybe not quite as much rain as last weekend. Still shouldn't be bad though. I mean, I'll take 16s and 18s any day in Vancouver with a medium amount of rain, or a mild actually amount of rain, 1 to 3 millimeters. Fishing wise locally, we need to look at the saltwater for that, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but let's throw it up to Squamish if any of you guys are going out that way, hitting up some of the lakes and some of the park areas that have just opened. Again, look at that list that I've got linked down in the description, because there's a few up that way that are still going to be closed and sort of have us scratching our heads, so check that out. But they're going to see similar, maybe with a little bit more precipitation. Let me just get it loading up here. So a little bit warmer on Friday for the guys up Squamish ways, but then yeah, they dip down into 15 and 16 with 5 and 4 millimeters of rain. As always, check your weather before you go, but that won't be a beautiful weekend to be hanging out on a a beach or hanging out on a lake, but the fishing still should be decent. And there's always a caveat: if the spring isn't a super scorching hot spring, if it's a little bit slower, that tends to extend the good fishing of the spring. Whereas you get a really, really hot spring, it tends to be an amazing fishing for a short period of time and then slows down because of the heat of the water in the lakes or the rivers. Okay, let's throw it out to Kamloops way, because everyone's been lake fishing, and we're gonna see it's 21 today on Thursday, 21 on Friday with some cloud. That looks decent. A little bit of rain mixed in, a little bit unsettled pressure, and then we do get a little bit of a dip on Saturday with some more rain, and then rain and cloud on Sunday. This is gonna make things challenging. Brendan was actually out yesterday and they got hit with wind, they got hit with rain. They had a few moments where things cleared up and they nailed some nice fish. But it's a real challenge when you get systems blowing through up there in the interior, as well as rain and cloud. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's look at the marine forecast, because we continue to hear great reports across the strait. We heard some Bowen reports this week and Howe Sound reports. They weren't fabulous, but they were consistent. But again, across the strait was excellent. Like I said last week, we are booking up our charters. Get in on one of those dates. Try to get across the strait if you want some ton of fun, catch and release a bunch of Chinook. But we are going to see a little bit of wind this weekend. Northwest 10 to 15, northwest 10 to 15 Saturday, northwest 10 to 15 Sunday. That's obviously something to keep your eye on. You know, if you've taken someone out who gets seasick very commonly, that one will bump them around a bit, but not be too unbearable. And definitely still fishable, but just keep your eye on it. Anytime we get northwest, it tends to get a little bit lumpy. Let's take a look at the tides and see how they're pushing in, because they're not as good as they were last week. And what I mean by that is there are some big swings on them. So yeah, you can see here come into Friday, it's like a high tide, slack tide, just as the sun's coming up, if not a little bit before. And then it's a big tide, a big shift in water. And then roll it out, that same big shift is going to be on Saturday. You're really only going to catch the low slack, because the high slack is at 5:30 and the next high slack is at 8:30. That's a challenging tide to fish. It's going to push you around a bit. As well as Sunday, same idea, getting kind of into a very, very early tide. Now, if you can hold out to sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, we get that nice little mellow tide in the morning, beautiful incoming tide. Definitely worth looking at if you're booking some trips. I'd still go fishing this weekend, because the fishing's been so good across the strait that it can totally trump a tide like this. But if you're stuck local, the weather looks a little intermittent, you might consider saving the gas for a weekend that's a little bit more calm and chill. All right, on the fly front, I've got two flies for you guys this week. One's from Zach, one is from Andre. Completely different worlds. We've got a lake chronomid and we've got a beach pattern. This is something new coming up. But we're also still running that contest on the What's in My Fly Box episode that aired last week, where we look down at the mothership, we go over my meat and potatoes, bread and butter lake patterns, as well as a cool chronomid box. We're going to be giving away the chronomid box. That's going to be happening in next week's report, so you still have time to enter. You're going to have to watch that video for details on how to do that. But let's look at the flies from Andre and Zach. The first one is the Alfie. This is one from Andre, and he's been tying these for beach fishing for years. This is a great all-round beach pattern. If you guys know, the pink shirt is usually out on the beach from July to August on a regular basis when the tides are right early in the morning. And this is one of his go-to patterns. Now, for a few of you guys might not know, but as the summer progresses, as our water drops, the Capilano coho stop really moving up the river and they stage out in the mouth. Depending on the year, depending on the water levels, this can change, but the beach fishing in the Capilano is really cool. This fishery is sort of hyper focused and it's one of the early coho runs, but the same thing can be said for any smaller river that has an estuary that have coho coming to it, more like August, September, October. And so you can train yourself on the Capilano. It's kind of the Olympics when it comes to the skill level that you need for catching coho on the beach, but there's a bunch more with bigger fish and more fish that you can go if you're willing to go a little farther afield. So if you're thinking about building a beach fishing coho box, check this guy out. I'm going to leave links right here. And on the lakefront, last week, Zach and Jordan went out and they had an excellent run up Cane Valley. It's kind of one of the closer places you can do in a day trip. It is a great place if you guys are thinking about doing a one-dayer from Vancouver. And they hit a couple lakes along that valley, and they had one pattern that lit it up for them. It was a double-digit day. Some nice fish. The lake they were fishing doesn't historically hold 10-pounders, but it does hold nice sort of 1 to 3, maybe even 4-pound fish. And so they did really well on this one fly, and Zach wanted to share it with you guys. It's a fairly simple pattern, but it's always nice to know that a pattern has put 20 or 30 fish under its belt in one day before you end up putting a bunch of them in your box. So I'm going to share that with you guys here, links up here, and make sure you check that one out because it's definitely worth adding. All right, guys, that's everything I've got for you this weekend. If you guys want to enter in that free box giveaway for the What's in My Fly Box video, take a look at right here. That's a link to her. I'm also going to link Zach's fly down here, and I'll throw Andre's fly up here for good measure so you guys got some material to play with for the weekend. As always, you want to see more reports like this, consider hitting the sub button, hit that like button. We'll catch you next week.